Prepare yourself for a sprawling discussion on just about anything, where critical thinking meets pop culture in a collision of mind-bending proportions. Please secure all neurons and prepare for full frontal cortex. It's time for Incoherent Ramblings. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Incoherent Ramblings. This is Rambling 002, and I'm Joey Shamble.
I'm Cale Anderson.
And I'm Daryl Jors.
This week we're going to carry over from last week where I was supposed to watch Looper for storytelling, and we're going to do time travel because now I've watched Looper.
Awesome.
Yep, I agree.
But who are we going to make fun of now?
We can make fun of you.
Okay.
All right.
I'm down with that.
You suck.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that was fun. Okay, so we're going to talk about time travel, and we're going to talk about time travel movies to get us started off. So this is a big announcement to anyone out there who doesn't want to be spoiled for certain movies, because we're going to talk all about them. And if you have not watched them, spoiler alert. So
and the spoiler alert's going to cover several movies. So Looper, of course.
Back to the Future, definitely.
Terminator.
Yeah. Time Machine, Bill and Ted, 12 Monkeys, Source Code, Deja Vu, Star Trek, kind of in those areas. We'll try to let you know if there's any others, but if you haven't seen those, as Daryl said, go watch the movies.
Oh, go watch the movies.
Hit stop, go watch the movies, and then come back, because we're going to be talking about them. We'll try, if we do any other movies besides the ones that we just mentioned, we'll try to mention beforehand, spoiler alert.
And we know that there are other movies that are time travel, but we tried to limit them to movies that actually have some scientific basis rather than stuff like Somewhere in Time or movies like that.
Because this is actually not just time travel in movies. We want to talk about time travel, but movies is such a great jumping off point, not only because we were talking about story last week and it goes into it, but also because it's such a great platform to try and look at the different theories.
We stopped ourselves at just the movies that make your head hurt when you think about them.
Yeah. Which would be Donnie Darko.
Well,
I never saw that one.
We're not going into Donnie Darko, but I'm saying that we're just going after movies that have something to say about paradoxes and situations like
that I guess mainly the ones that have interesting ideas about time travel.
Yeah,
too.
I think that's probably a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Since Looper was where I screwed up last week, let's talk about it now. And I think the best way to start this is because the reason we even brought Looper up was because Cale originally said we were talking about storytelling, and he said, oh, it was a great story all the way through, and then the ending, was something I didn't like, it was horrible, just over the edge.
Spoiler alert!
Oh, spoiler alert. And then Daryl was like, well, wait a second, I kind of like parts of that. So I
but
think
he couldn't talk about it because you hadn't watched
seen it.
That's right.
So I think that we should start with Cale and talk about the ending and how you felt about it, and then Daryl, and then I'll put my 2 cents in.
All right, so this is your last chance. Go watch Looper now or forever hold your peace.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so Looper.
I didn't like the ending, and the reason is because we were talking about story, and one of the main things that you don't want to do in story is you don't want to leave your audience hanging. People want things completed. They want it finished. But sometimes and a lot of times with film students, they definitely try to create these, well, you make up the ending, you decide the way it went. No, nobody wants that, really. Most people don't want that. Most people want you to finish the damn movie.
I want it.
When I finished,
you're one of those freaks.
When I finished watching Looper, my first thought was, Cale is not going to like it because they didn't tell enough about what's going on and what happened. I knew that was it because you didn't like Unbreakable.
Yeah.
And I remember that was the reason you didn't like Unbreakable.
Do we have to do a spoiler on that?
No, we don't even have to talk about it. It's just he didn't like it for the same reason. But we don't need to do a spoiler on that.
The part of Spoiler Police will be played by Daryl Jors tonight.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. I like that. Go close to the mic. Hi, it's me. How you doing? Hey.
That sounds like suddenly we're in a porno or something. Hey, baby, that sounds.
Yeah, we don't want to edit anything out. What's going on there? Okay, so Daryl, your thoughts.
I think we have an incomplete cast for a porno.
Okay, let me really quickly. This is definitely spoiler alert.
Too much sausage in the room.
What the hell?
That's not the spoiler alert.
Okay.
Before we continue talking about Looper, for those who don't care about spoilers, who may not have seen it, really quickly, The ending was he kind of solved the whole thing by killing himself. Yeah. And so, because that happened...
And therefore changing
supposedly
the future.
changing the future, but we don't know.
We don't know.
I wasn't sure if that was going to be his issue, was the sudden change in character that he had. But I think they played it well.
I think they did too, yeah.
Because it's completely the hero's journey you talked about last week, where someone sees a dead-end path for themselves, or they see what they... Especially in this movie, because he sees his future self, and he sees that his future self is... so protective of something that he loves that he's willing to go through to great lengths to protect it.
No, just and like I totally liked that.
Right?
So that wasn't the part I didn't like.
It was that it ended where it ended.
Yeah.
He sold his friend out, Seth, for the silver. Right. And then he goes murdering kids that might grow up to be this person that leads to his wife's death.
Right.
He's just as clingy as ever. He hasn't changed enough to let go of something that he loves, even if it means that thing is going to perish in the process. And he has that opportunity when they're sitting in the diner.
Right.
He says, the young version of himself says to his older version, well, just show me her picture, and I'll make sure to turn away when I see her, and therefore she's saved. Yeah. Right? But he would have nothing to do with that, because his older self is too... jealously self-centered to let go of her, and he wants to have his life with her back. He's not necessarily worried in protecting her. So I think that that's part of the hero's journey. Like, he gets to preview his future, and he sees that nothing's changed. He's still this person that's going to kill in order to get what he wants. And I think that's when he notices that the only way I get off of this path is to end me.
Yeah,
because I don't change.
Yeah, and I love that about the movie,
change, right?
And that's why I liked it up until the very end.
Yeah.
If they would have continued the story and told us how it ended, and probably, at least for a commercial movie, end it in a good way, and then we would have been satisfied. Yeah. That's the way I looked at it.
Let me tell you a little story. When I was a little boy, my mom read me a book, and I don't know why I have a memory of this. All I remember exactly was it had something to do with a feather, and it was this kid who was going to go on an adventure. And just before he went on the adventure, it was all building up to it. It was a short story. It ended. And I was like, what the hell? Well, I didn't say that because I was like 9. But yeah, well, that was the whole thing. And my mom's like, well, no, that's the whole point of the story is now you figure out how you think it's going to happen, how you think it's going to end. I was like, I don't like that.
You know, it's funny because I have a very similar story. Because my mom, when I was young, told me a story. And she sat me down in bed and tucked me in. And she said, okay, Daryl.
She didn't have a feather, though, did she?
No feather.
Okay.
But she said, I'm going to read you this story.
She didn't have a feather. The feather was in the story.
Oh, okay.
What do you think she was doing to me?
Well, I keep...
Get your mind out of the gutter.
Never mind. It was tickle your ass with a feather, but whatever.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. So we should second guess this editing thing again. So
it's tickling ass with a feather is fine. We can keep that in. It's just if we do something that would offend someone.
Oh, okay.
Like if I was talking about a group of people who tickled asses with feathers, and then I said a derogatory thing about them, that would be bad.
So my mom sat me down to read me the story, and she opened up the book to the first page. The end.
The end.
Yeah, because you have to make up the ending to that story I just told.
Wow.
Yeah.
You dick. I was actually getting interested in that. Anyway, let's go to my take on it, because I actually did like Unbreakable, even though it does that. I have to admit, it does leave me with a feeling of, I want to know what happened, but at the same time, in an epic way, if there's enough that leads in a certain direction, I'm okay with it. And that's why in this story, I felt there was another hero's journey, or not a hero necessarily, but another person's journey. And that was the journey of the mom. Because the way I see the mom is that in the first situation, he wasn't there anyway. So he didn't kill the mom. So even though the mom survived, the kid still grew up to be the rainmaker.
And that was my problem.
Right. Okay, but this is how I see it. Because of the situation they were in, and you saw she hid in the safe before. She was scared of him. There was nothing that happened in her life to change her from being that person. So she brought him up being scared of him, not loving him. But because of the situation, you see at that point when her character does her 180, she's floating there. And she's like, instead of being scared and turning away, she says it's okay, and she calms him down.
Right.
So that's kind of telling you, without showing the ending, this is what changed it. The fact that she is now someone who's going to love this kid. Now she's someone who's got all this money because the silver's there. that there's a very good chance that it's not going to happen.
Well, let me point out also, I think that's why I didn't have an issue with it, because I think they give you enough tips of the hat to say he won't become the Rainmaker in the future.
See, I wasn't convinced.
See, I was pretty convinced.
Because I think one little time of her calming him down is not going to solve it.
Right.
You know, and he was severe. He was a severe person that was going to turn into a monster.
Right.
So I just didn't see it.
But if you think about it, though, in the alternate timeline where he does become the Rainmaker, he loses his mom, then he loses his surrogate mom, without even knowing that she was the real mom. And in this version of it, in the new reality that's created, when the Looper kills himself, then the mom is there for him, first of all. And then also he realizes that he can reconnect with her in a way he never did before, because before he was pushing her away, because it's like, you're not really my mom. You're not important to me. You're just someone who took over my mom's place. But after he has that moment of realizing that, oh, this is my mom, and now he's going to have someone there for him to raise him, it creates a whole new reality. Plus, he has the role model of the Looper, the young Looper, who befriended him a little bit, was kind of a father figure for him while he was around. And then maybe later on, the fact that this person sacrificed himself is going to be important in changing the Rainmaker into somebody different as well.
Possible.
That's
all
a good
those
point.
are possible.
I was focusing on the mom and not too much on the kid, but you're right. The kid accepted the mom's help, which is, I think,
and
huge.
They also show, when the Looper is thinking about Joe.
What would have happened?
Joe is his name. Yeah, what would have happened? He sees the kid alone on a train, just like he was when he was in his youth, and he realizes, oh crap, this is the road to.
I saw that.
Oh, and that makes his connection good. Okay,
right.
I didn't catch
so
that.
that's part of why he decides to make that ultimate sacrifice,
right?
And he's hoping that it'll change. But also, if you think about storytelling from the point of view of someone, this is a story from the point of view of Joe, the Looper, and when he ends his own life, that kind of ends the story too. Like he makes this ultimate sacrifice, and he himself is not going to know for sure it worked.
That's a good point. It's not about the Rainmaker.
That's kind of pointed,
I think he just made the best choice he could.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now let's kind of move off that now that unless you guys have any more.
I wanted to one more thing about.
Well, we're going to stay on Looper, but talk about time travel. But go ahead.
Unfinished business in a story, though, it made me think about. And I'm not going to do a spoiler here, but Pan's Labyrinth is another movie with a very open ending. Did you?
Oh yeah, that's true.
I saw that.
Did you ever watch that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I liked it.
What did you think?
And it's been so long though that I can't remember.
Yeah.
It is that they let you decide, but it was kind of different because Pan's Labyrinth, they kind of wrap up the story a bit more. You just don't know which direction it went because you had kind of two choices.
I just remember it was David Bowie, and that was cool.
No. That wasn't it. That's the wrong one.
Pan's
Labyrinth.
I'm sorry, Labyrinth.
Not Labyrinth. Oh my God.
Right.
Labyrinth was pretty straightforward.
Now that I know what you're talking about,
singing Baby.
That was awesome. And yes, they did kind of leave it, but there was so much cool about it that I still really like that movie.
So you give that movie a pass, but not Looper, because
exactly.
I felt more.
Although I do give a pass for his nose, because that did make him look more like Bruce Willis.
I have to say, he did an awesome job of doing Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
We were watching him before even Bruce Willis. We're like, he is acting just like Bruce Willis.
Yeah, Linda
when he's
was
sitting there in the
that.
diner, and Kim's like, he sounds just like
Bruce
Willis.
You guys know where he got to start, right?
It was
which one?
Gordon. Joseph
well,
Gordon
he was Third Rock from the Sun, right?
Yeah, he was the little long-haired punk from Third Rock.
Well, the old man from Third Rock from the Sun.
The old man?
Remember? Because he was an alien. He was actually an old man.
Actually an old man, right.
I don't know.
But it's just interesting, like, seeing him as an actor popping up like he's been in the recent Batman movies and stuff.
And also...
I just see him and I go...
What was that? Insurrection or whatever?
I didn't see that. Yeah, he was in Insurrection. He was in Batman or Dark Knight.
Not Insurrection, whatever.
Yeah, he's the guy
Insurrection. That was Star Trek.
He's the guy that would most likely become Robin.
Yeah, definitely.
Spoiler! Oh, crap, we didn't spoiler.
Oops.
Spoiler! Don't listen to... Ah, damn it.
Too late.
All right.
Oh, man,
and it was the spoiler police.
I have to turn in my spoiler police badge.
Dude!
Where's the rubber hose? He needs to be beaten.
But you were talking about the old Batman series, right?
Though, when you see the movie, you know that that's the guy that's going to be... It's so obvious. That's not really a spoiler, people.
I didn't...
Oh, okay. All right.
I thought but later, maybe. Okay.
Well, since we
okay.
said we're such
Okay.
superior people,
Yeah.
we're assuming that those people are going to understand.
Okay, 95%. Okay,
Right.
time travel. So,
Yes, time travel.
Let's go to time travel. Let's go to
Spit
Looper
on
time
that
travel. I'm
iPad
going to
again.
start off telling you what I didn't like about time travel in Looper. Okay? I really didn't like. It was a cool concept for the story, but I didn't like it in the aspects of time travel. The whole, oh, my finger's missing. Oh, my other finger's missing. Oh, my arm's missing.
is
My
a
leg's
little
missing.
weird.
Because he wouldn't be in that situation. Everything would have changed.
right.
How could he be driving a car if moments
It would have
before he
changed
didn't have
instantly.
2 legs?
Exactly.
And that really bugged me. I mean, it was cool that it was happening,
Okay,
but
I have kind of a way of looking at it,
Okay,
and
yeah.
I don't know exactly how to piece it together. But you know how I thought it was a great scene where the 2 Joes are sitting across the table from one another, and young Joe is saying, "But how does it work?" You know
Yes.
how things, and you know the Bruce Willis older Joe goes, "Well, you know, if I explained it to you, I'd be drawing diagrams.
Ah, it
I'd
was
be here for
great.
an hour."
It was
And-
great.
and it was really great, and that's another callback I wanted to make to storytelling. That's a tenet of it is show don't tell. And this movie, instead of giving you endless exposition
Yes.
of people talking about how time travel works, they actually showed you.
Yeah.
And I give it a pass in that regard because it was making my head hurt trying to figure out what their version of time travel was. But at the same time, I was glad that they just plain showed us by having Seth getting cut up in real time
Right.
and his older self was falling apart.
Right.
And
That
that
was-
explained it.
It
And
was
if you
great for
accept
the story.
explanation,
And okay, I got where you're going with
It's
that.
cool.
If you go
And-
with the premise,
So I was thinking, other than rather than having a problem with the ending, I had more of a problem with some of the premises.
yeah,
of how time travel
yes,
works.
that was my
But
issue.
once you allow that, they really use it to great effect, and it's a great story. So I give
Yeah.
them kind of a pass. It's like there are problems in Terminator 2, but I give it a pass because it made such a great movie. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, and you know what? I kind of agree with you in that it didn't pull me out of the movie. It was enough where I was I thought about it for a second, but then the whole thing where the guy gets shot and you look in there and there's the doctor in the background and he's cutting him up. You're kind of like, ooh, that's kind of cool. And then the movie continues, and it didn't pull me out. It didn't make me go, oh, well, that's kind of stupid. It doesn't.
You know,
work
one of the
this
things
way.
I was wondering about that whole scene too is if they just killed the young version of him, wouldn't he just disappear? The older version,
Right, they didn't kill
Well,
him. That was the whole
it
point.
depends on
So-
which type of time travel
And
you're
that's
talking about.
that's why I
But
didn't
that's what
like it.
happens to old.
They
Joe.
didn't kill. That's why they had a doctor.
Yeah.
They did. That's what he said. What's his name? The guy who was in charge said, "We're not killing him because it's too dangerous."
Okay.
And then he said, "We're going to do something that is also dangerous, but it's better."
Right.
And
okay.
so that's why they weren't just cutting him up. They had a doctor doing it surgically,
Right.
so he would survive.
So he would survive.
But then the
Okay,
whole thing
so-
is, how did he escape? And he lived his whole life. It would change everything,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
which is why I don't like that premise. But you're right. It kind of
Okay, so I have a couple of ways to try to explain how time travel works in Looper.
okay. Go.
I think you could explain how it was outlawed based on multiple universe theory. That
Right.
quantumly, whenever something moves a different direction, you have infinite universes spawning all the time.
Right.
So every decision someone makes, there are 2 universes, one where they make decision A, another where they make decision B. And that splits off into 2 different futures. And the universe splits infinitely
Right.
every moment, all the time, into all these different routes.
That's why I don't like that version.
I know. I rail against that a little bit. But it's interesting, though, because I've heard about some people say that...
Well, that was
Because
what
of
was that TV show that did that? Remember? They were time traveling to alter dimensions always.
Sliders?
Sliders, that was
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. It wasn't time travel. It was dimensional travel, but it was that idea.
Same
yeah.
thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's another way of looking at it, though, because I think it sounds... And, again, the universe doesn't have to sound reasonable. You know, that idea sounds kind of unreasonable because why would there be infinite universes? But then again, if the universe itself is infinitely large, why not? You know, and an infinity is so big that even if you multiply that, okay, every single particle makes a decision to go some direction, and that causes a new universe, so there are infinite universes spawning all the time, and then you get that compounded by people time traveling back and forth, and their decisions create new universes in the past. But still, infinity is big enough that you can have an infinite number of these going on, an infinite number of
Right,
those,
yeah.
and they still fit within infinity. So that's part of the problem of getting your head around it.
Okay,
but
but
it seems to go against Occam's razor a little bit because
Yeah.
it's not the simplest explanation. It has too many contingencies.
Well, let's stick right out, because that's one of the main ideas of time travel is the alternate universe theory. So why don't we stick with that idea right now and look at movies that did that and talk about that. I want to know how you see it working with Looper.
Well, how I see it working with Looper, in terms of how time travel got outlawed, is that every time someone would time travel, they would just disappear from that universe.
Right.
Because, like, they go back in time
and nothing changes.
Nothing changes, right.
Like, they say, okay, let's send someone 5 minutes ago. And then they find out, oh, that person never showed up. Because they appeared 5 minutes ago in a different universe.
Right.
And
or people all of a sudden appearing in their universe.
Okay.
Right.
I want to interject deja vu right now.
Okay.
Because, have you seen it, Daryl?
No.
Okay, you saw it. Okay.
Spoiler?
Yes,
so, spoiler alert for Deja Vu.
Sorry about the Batman thing, people. I was drunk or something.
Okay.
I don't know.
The whole thing is about they're watching the past.
What are you having then?
They've got this worm.
Vodka.
He's drinking water. Okay, nobody can see that. Because it kind of looks like... Okay, so they're watching a wormhole to the past. And Val Kilmer's in there, and he's going like, "Hey, what's going on?"
Maybe I should not listen to this.
No,
I might watch this movie sometime.
The basic thing is they're watching because they're trying to solve a murder, so they can see a certain point in the past, and they can go anywhere at that time. But once that time is gone, if the wormhole only goes to like 2 days ago or whatever it is. So they've got to figure out what happened at that time, and they can send things through, but to the past, but they don't send people or anything because they're not trying to save anybody. They're trying to solve a murder, trying to solve a case.
Right.
So anyway, it ends up that who's the guy again? Denzel
Washington.
Denzel Washington's character falls in love with a girl and wants to go back and save her.
Yeah.
So he goes back. But then the whole idea is just that. It is multiple universe. Mm-hmm. So in the movie, he goes back and saves her, and then there's a whole new universe because the stuff never happens. Because if it was the same universe, he would have caused a paradox. Right. So it must be multiple universes, which means the guy the guy who was running the computer sent him off and got in a lot of trouble because it shut down the grid and everything. But what really happened is the guy in the past sent Denzel Washington off, and then he was just gone, just like you said. Mm-hmm. And which means he got in big trouble because all he did was basically kill a guy. Yeah. And that's how multiple universes would work. Now my problem is with Looper is if it's a multiple universe thing, so that what's going on with the guy losing fingers? It's relative to him, I guess.
Exactly.
That's the part that doesn't work.
It can't be. It can't be
but
that.
Because that's different. That's a different theory. That's saying the theory that when you change something, it changes.
Here's my way of kind of visualizing it. Okay, when you time travel anywhere, you jump to a neighboring universe. Okay, now I don't know exactly how that remains connected to the original universe you came from. But the way I kind of envision it is that because, you know how old Joe was saying that he had cloudy memories of things that were happening right then to the young version of him? Yeah. And then they would become clear. And I think the way you kind of think about that is just like on a piece of videotape. Like your life was lived out ahead of you on this piece of tape, and you jump back in time to this new place, and you begin recording again over your old life. And as you move forward, things change. And eventually you did come from this other universe where you were a different person, but for some reason those two universes are sending information back and forth, and things that happen to you in this new universe and in your past start affecting things like your body, like you have scars and you're missing limbs.
Okay, that could be kind
of I think
stretching a little bit.
That overcomplicates it, and I think it overcomplicates it too much for that theory, for the multiple universe theory.
Yeah, I think the best thing that you can do in multiple universe theory is you have to go with multiple universe and it means that you're in a multiple universe.
Yeah.
And you're there, and there's
you've
nothing.
Moved,
and
you've moved, and
that's
exist.
it. Which means anything that happens to that past person has nothing to do with you because you're not the same person. But of course, we don't see it that way.
I tend to agree with that. However, I think that we're only really looking into it this deeply because it was a film that presented itself as a hard sci-fi film.
Yeah.
It takes itself very seriously.
It does.
Although doing that, it didn't show any time travel machines or anything, and I thought that would have made it better.
Yeah, they did. Well, they showed the little orb. Anyway, but
yeah, they showed where he time traveled.
But that's exactly it. It's the whole Austin Powers thing of. We're not going to worry too much about what's going on here and looking at the camera. You guys out there don't worry about it either. It's kind of that thing because we've got a story here and we want to use the idea of time travel to make the story go, but the real story is about this guy.
But in terms of a story, it works very well because they explain themselves thoroughly without using a lot of exposition. And then they leave it to the viewer to kind of figure out on what's going on. And in a way, that's something you can appreciate about a movie like this because it makes you think. After the fact or during the movie, you have to kind of rack your brain to figure out what their version of time travel really is and how it would actually work. I haven't necessarily made it work yet in my head, but I'm kind of happy that they gave me something to mull over.
Kayla, you'll probably hate Donnie Darko, actually.
But then back to the Future, I don't think we would hold to the same type of
because it's a comedy adventure type thing.
Right, it's just a happy-go-lucky movie.
Okay, now let's go Back to the Future because I love Back to the Future. It's my all-time favorite movie. And Back to the Future.
You can thank me for the segue.
Thank you very much. Back to the Future, and because I love time travel too.
Mistake.
Yeah, a little bit. Because I love time travel too, I've often thought about the Back to the Future time travel problems, and there are a ton of them. You're looking, especially Back to the Future 2, which is the whole idea of Biff going back in time and then coming back to the future, but then they go into the past, and then everything's still the same. It's just all messed up, but it's still fine because it's fun.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It makes you think a little bit.
You suspend your disbelief and you just go with it.
Right. And it's enough that it's not corny science fiction. Yeah. It's enough that it's enough seriousness and you'll suspend your disbelief. So the problems in Back to the Future I don't really have a big deal with. And having Doc there...
Well, it's because you worked there too. That was part of it.
Having Doc there, but having Doc as the expert in the movie, you just believe him.
Yeah,
when
because
he says
we accept
something,
he's a genius.
Exactly. When he says, the universe might explode, you're like, oh my god, the universe is going to explode.
Right. Yeah,
and so that works.
They make him an authority for that. I wanted to say one thing about...
Go ahead.
About Back to the Future that even as a child I kind of thought about was when he's looking at the photo of his family and he's starting to fade away. And I'm going like, okay, if he really were gone, why would the photo be framed exactly the same and they're wearing the same clothes and they took it at exactly the same time?
It's the finger, missing the fingers from...
Yeah.
Kind of like...
Well, no, but the thing is, on the commentary, they talk about that. Yeah. Because on the commentary, Zemeckis is all like, it was a gag. It was all for the gag so Doc could say, look, they cut off the top of his head. And... it's pretty horrible photographic fakery. They cut off the top of your brother's head. That was the joke. Yeah. And so because of that, they faded like that. But then when it got to Marty, they couldn't fade him like that. So he just started fading regularly because otherwise he'd be walking around without a head. And everybody, he says, they always talk to me about this. It's just a movie. It was supposed to be funny.
Right.
Which is what we usually...
But then again, in terms of a movie that doesn't take itself too seriously, it's a good vehicle to explain what's happening. That's how does Marty realize his future is uncertain?
Right.
He sees himself fading out of the photo. I mean...
He's fading,
Right?
Yeah, no, and that's why
it gets a pass.
So good, yeah.
But that wouldn't get a pass in Looper. Like, this movie is taking itself way too seriously to get away with that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about serious science fiction, let's go to Terminator, because...
Yes, Terminator.
Terminator takes itself very seriously. The whole basis is time travel, and...
it has problems.
It has problems, it does. I mean, Terminator 2 did a pretty good job. It's a great movie, and I think they did the best job out of all of them. Terminator was pretty good, too.
I have to say I'm a much bigger fan of the sequel than... of T2, specifically.
Yeah.
The original seemed like an experiment that didn't quite go right.
Well,
but then the sequel was really good.
Well, and the biggest problem with the original is the whole thing where, okay, he goes back in time and he's going to be the dad, so the son sent him back to be the dad.
It definitely was a grandfather paradox right there.
It's like it's like a future view of the grandfather paradox.
It's like a reverse.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like you said, experiment. It was very very interesting experiment, and T2 did a good job. T3,
well, the problem was that I had written a great third movie.
Yeah.
I had written a script a story outline for a great ending for Terminator.
Yeah.
But boom, they made it, and
they
now
went T3,
well,
and
they don't want to end it because they have to. Milking it.
By the way, I have to say, I loved Salvation. I thought it was really good.
Oh, I thought that was
a lot of people
awesome.
Don't like it. I freaking loved it. I thought it was good.
I'm definitely the outcast here.
Really? I hear a lot of people like it less than Terminator 3, which I thought was horrible. I thought T3 was terrible. But I liked Salvation.
I like Salvation better than T3.
Yeah, and I liked Salvation as a different, like a takeoff of the Terminator, like in a different area. It's not part. It's not like Terminator 4. It's like Terminator in the future.
Right.
It's not even Terminator. I don't think they should call it Terminator. It's just in that
I thought
timeline.
It had way too many problems.
Really?
I can't specify right now because it's been a
right.
But I remember I was very dissatisfied after I watched it.
The major problem with 3, I thought, other than the story part, which could have been okay if they'd had a different actor. Mm-hmm. That was the big problem. They needed a different actor to sell that part, and he didn't sell it.
He didn't seem like John Connor.
No, he didn't seem like John Connor at all. Speaking of which, the TV show, though, I really liked, and I wish they'd continue.
I gave that a few episodes worth, and I thought there were too many things that seemed inconsistent with the original Terminator.
And that's exactly it.
Kind of a problem to me. Like, if they're going to establish the rules of the Terminator universe, why break them for this show?
Okay, and that for everybody out there listening, if you want to be confused, just look up Terminator timeline. You will find so many timelines that are just trying to simplify it. It's all over, and some of them are pretty good, but for the most part, you end up with basically, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 different timelines. 5 because of the TV show. Each one's basically its own timeline. They're their own story.
This will have to be another discussion that we have at a later podcast, but I thought I wanted to bring up canon. Like, when there's a TV show, a movie, a comic book, a kid's cartoon, and all this stuff in one what product line or one
franchise.
Thank you. Yeah, like there's one franchise, but it gets subdivided into so many different ways, and there are 5 canon continuities for any given franchise.
Well, the problem is just that it starts out smaller, and as it gets bigger, it just reaches its tipping point, and after that,
and then it keeps.
You just can't. You're going to have to go with whatever they say.
In the sense of Terminator 2, what happened? Cameron came in and he took his original idea and he made it better, and then he said, "I'm done."
Right.
And which is fine, but unfortunately...
And I think that was the right call. With the quality of everything that's come since, I think that would have been good just to leave it.
That's why I did the same thing with Aliens.
Yeah. Oh, let's not even get on Prometheus, because I liked it, but don't know what's going on. Anyway, time travel. Yes, stay with time travel. Focus. So wait, let's talk...
We might want to add Minority Report to the list, too.
Yes, excellent. That computer system in there is so cool.
I'm not sure if you call that time... Minority Report.
Well, because it has to do with predicting the future, anyway.
Yeah, so it's precognition, not necessarily time travel.
But it kind of relates, though. I think
it sort of does, but I don't think it.
I didn't like the ending. It didn't.
Well, you know why? It's because it's Philip K. Dick, and when he writes, he's the guy who writes all the great stories and books that they turn into movies.
Yeah.
And. Well, he's a dick, and
he should have owned a radio station.
He ends the what?
He should have owned a radio station.
Oh,
it's K Dick
and WK Dick. Yeah, but that I don't know. Like I said, he's written lots of stuff, and he always seems to give you that freaky ending that you just don't quite like.
It didn't quite work. But let's kind of go back and talk a little bit more about, maybe move away from movies a little bit. We'll come back to them, but let's talk a little bit more about multiple, because I think that's the idea of multiple worlds is probably one of the most complicated but also the most feasible ways of looking at time travel. The reason I say that is because the only other options in reality would be time travel doesn't exist, or time travel does exist but you can't change anything. Everything is as it is. And that's pretty much it. I mean, can you guys interject? Is there anything else that could physically... I was
going to mention one other theory that's related to the multiple universes thing. I didn't quite get to it. But the idea was because of uncertainty principle. You could either think that since you don't know the exact location and velocity of any given particle at any given time, it's impossible to know them both, that there are multiple realities where that particle is everywhere and going every direction all at once. And that could... in some sense, split into infinite universes.
So only when you actually have an action does it spin into a new universe.
But here's the thing. That's one idea. That it's right. Well, like collapsing the
the wave function.
The wave function. Right. When you collapse that means that it happened a particular way.
Right.
And that might mean that there is just one universe. And then if you time traveled, you might actually cause things to collapse a different way.
Well, it's Schrodinger's cat,
Oh, well, that's an interesting point.
Dead or alive.
But no, that's an interesting point. But then we're getting into a paradox.
Right.
But there's a possibility that if you're changing the past, that doesn't necessarily affect the future. If you're out of the time loop.
Right, because the future existed, and maybe the universe only splits when the wave function collapses 2 different ways. at any given moment.
Yeah, now that's a possibility.
That would mean there would still be infinite universes, but it seems like
only
it's
when
less wasteful.
Yeah,
You know,
it only happens when it needs to.
Yeah,
Which
it only happens when it needs to avoid a paradox.
Right.
Which we can kind of look at. Well, if we look at source code, the whole idea with source code, if it is the source code was creating a universe every time he went back in. I mean, that's how I saw it. He went in, he created a universe.
That's the way I thought
he went in, he created a universe.
I have to kind of bow out of that because I never saw it. So,
you haven't seen?
You should see it. It's actually pretty good. You'd enjoy it. We won't tell.
It's okay.
We won't go on.
I like the movie a lot.
I don't know. I kind of like Jake Gyllenhaal in Oates, but he's not my favorite.
He plays this part well though. Actually,
yeah.
He does it for because he's like a I don't want to give anything away, but he's a soldier. He's a young soldier, so that's kind of out of his element. So it works out. But
actually, he is a cool actor. I just had to say that.
Oh, okay. But in source code, just without giving too much away, basically he's trying to find a bomb. It's kind of like deja vu in a way.
Yeah, it's similar in that way.
And it's not really time travel. So they're saying you're not time traveling. You're not going back.
Shows the premise.
Yeah. You're not going back in time. What we're doing is we've extracted this memory from this guy's brain and we've put it into our source code, and we're injecting your consciousness into it.
Oh, interesting.
And because his memory can remember the last 12 minutes as part of his brain.
Right.
But what ends up happening, or what he kind of figures out, is that it's actually creating a new universe. And they don't say that, but that's kind of what you get.
Every
time. But then he dies in the train crash every time, or he dies from some other thing every time, so he goes back to his universe.
Right.
But there's still one being created every time. And then before it's such an interesting idea that from this guy's brain, connected to the source code, they've generated, it's like a universe generator.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the coolest idea, is that they are they don't mean to, but they're purposely making universes with time travel. So that's another way of looking at time travel, is like, let's make this time travel and this time travel universe.
Well, the one thing I wanted to talk about, the fixed universe.
Okay, why don't we transfer over that, because something you said made me rethink it for a moment. But let's talk about the fixed universe, because the classic idea of the fixed universe has a lot of very philosophical. How do you say
philosophical?
That? Thank you. I always get that wrong. Philosophical implications, because if there's a fixed universe, that means there's no free will, pretty much. Because what's going to happen is going to happen. And time travel can be possible, but you can't change it. So someone who has knowledge of time travel would then be trapped in this kind of thing of, I can't do anything about it, and they'd actually maybe separate from themselves, going, hey, I'm doing stuff that I can't control.
Well, if the thing is that if with that way of thinking of time travel, if you did it, you already did it.
Right, exactly.
And so if you went back and changed the future, it's already changed. And what happened, the future that's now, is because you changed it. And that happens every time anybody travels.
But the problem is that if you purposely try to do a paradox in that case, you can't do a paradox.
No, you can't. Not in the fixed one.
But then what if I say, okay, I've got control of time travel, I'm going to go forward in time to myself right now, and I'm going to go and I'm going to say hi to myself. And I'm going to see what happens. So you go forward, say hi to yourself, and you guys have a ham sandwich. Okay? So then when the time comes when you're going to come forward to yourself, you say, I'm not going to have a ham sandwich, I'm going to punch him in the face. You can't do that.
Nope.
So that means you don't have free will.
Right.
You have to have that ham sandwich. But what if you say, I'm going to punch him in the face, I'm going to punch him in the face, but that gets to that point, and you're making a ham sandwich.
It's entirely possible free will is an illusion anyway.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. That's why it has these implications.
Yeah.
If time travel, it's a if-then. If time travel is static, if wait, we go like this. If it's possible, and the universe, and nothing can be changed in the universe over time, then you have no free will. Like it's almost an equation.
The one good thing about that theory is that, which by the way I don't buy into it, but
right.
This theory is that there's a thing called space-time, and that fits with it.
Yeah,
meaning everything, space and time are fixed where they are. So if you travel in time to a certain place, that's the place you're going to be, because space and time are there. And it doesn't flow like we feel like time is moving right now. It's not. We're moving from this space-time to the next space-time to the next space-time. And that's what's going on here.
Well, and I think this is a good... Well, I think we need to transition over to your view of time, Cale, which is there is no time, which I think is very good way to go from this, which means time travel is not possible. But let's stick with this solid.
Yeah, I'll talk about that later.
That would be kind of tied to, say, like warping space. Like if you did faster than light travel, it would also involve some sort of time travel as well.
Well, that's one of the theories. That Ronald Mallet is talking about that.
Ronald Mallet. that guy.
For those of you who are looking him up right now, Ronald Mallet is probably the only scientist who's ever been taken seriously about having a concept of time travel that may work.
And who's actually trying to build a machine,
working machine
to show frame dragging, which we got to talk more about that later.
And basically, Daryl hasn't read the book, but he's got a book out from a few years ago, and people
it's
were
called
looking.
The Time Traveler.
I think so.
Yeah.
And people were looking at him. Scientists were going, "Hey, this all fits, makes sense." The thing is, we haven't heard anything from him in the past few years, which means either he was wrong or the government's going, "Here's some money. Don't talk."
Well, the good thing is that
there can be more
to prepare for this podcast. To prepare for this podcast, I actually looked all up, and so I know where he's at and what he's doing, except where the government is not.
Okay, so what's going on?
What?
What's going on? What's he doing?
Okay, well, he's lecturing all over the place, and Spike Lee bought his the rights to his book and is going to make a movie out of the book. But for him, basically, he had some ideas about using lasers, infinite loop, where you shoot the laser in a circle again and again, and the light, the bending of the light also bends space-time, and so it creates this loop. And if you go into the center of that,
or send information into the center,
right, then it will go through and come back to the beginning of when you started.
And I think the most interesting point of that was that you can't travel back before the time machine was created.
Exactly.
Because it only goes back to the beginning of the loop.
Okay.
Which is it's a very cool concept.
So we can only have time travel at the point where the first person did the time travel.
Right.
The thing is, when we read this a couple years ago, and from everything
you succeeded the moment you begin.
Exactly, because you would get something back, and that's the whole thing. We were expecting, because we heard they were experimenting with it. We were expecting in a couple of years. We were like, "Oh my God, this is either going to work or it's not. We're going to hear something."
Yeah.
Silence. So wait, Kale. So he's just lecturing. He's not making his machine.
What happened was that one of the first things that he did was he. Let me get the thing up here on Wikipedia about him.
It was for those of you who want to.
By the way, our podcast is so cool. We use Wikipedia as a primary reference.
So that means everything is true.
That's true.
That's right.
Anyway,
actually, though, I do hope that at some point we have enough of a listener base that they will write in and call us out on certain things, and we can argue on forums and stuff like that. But
that's right.
We'll see what happens.
Coming to tell
That'll be great because then we'll start learning.
Exactly.
Right now we're just spewing.
I think that's one of the unspoken things we never really got around to is that we're doing the best that we can with some very limited kind of last minute research, and we might have it wrong, but it's kind of fun to talk about anyway.
Yeah. We're just kind of having
it's more opinion than
a lot of it's just rambling, incoherent.
Yeah, exactly. Incoherent rambling, just like that.
Boom! Look how we worked that
nice
in.
way to bring it around.
Look, that wasn't even
exactly.
So anyway, for any of you out there who want to read the book, it's really good. It's a good read because he also talks about his life and moving up to the position he was in and how he got ridiculed and it's not overly scientific. So I do definitely recommend it.
Right. Well, the one thing I was going to say that I just looked up is that these two guys, Ken Olam and Alan Everett, have looked at his research and his papers, and they think that they have found some problems with it. Mainly, the thing is that in his paper he required a singularity to make the thing work. So that would be kind of hard to make.
Yeah.
But then he came up with another way to create the frame dragging of the space time with the laser. And that one looks like it might work, and he's in the process of trying to use what he calls the superfluids, where he wants to slow down time by shooting it through, like...
Somebody's in the kitchen.
With Dinah?
In the kitchen, I know.
Yeah, making great food.
What's a jambo? Sorry.
Jambo.
Okay, so anyway...
jawbone
Let's
jumbo.
go to the next idea of it being impossible and or time not existing. Unless we want to say anything else about the solid single universe.
I'm done with that.
That's pretty simple. I mean, there's one way it either is or it isn't.
Yeah. But I think that it is interesting to think about multiple universes in terms of how the wave function collapses, because
I do like the idea. I do like the idea.
Why not allow the universe to go multiple directions, and that would take care of any possible paradoxes. It kind of means you could still have free will. It sounds nice. You know what I mean? I have nothing to back this up. It just sounds good.
I like the idea that things are settled, and then if there's going to be a paradox, they go, let's just make this other universe.
But then again, it kind of imbues the universe with a certain intelligence. So there has to be a very simple formula at the base of it that allows this to happen without, claiming that, there has to be, some super being watching everybody and making sure paradoxes don't happen.
Well, there is actually a different view. I just remember looking at this from the newer... We should talk about the Time Machine. The original Time Machine didn't have too much in the way of paradoxes because he went like 300,000 years in the future or something like that.
Right.
But in the newer movie of the Time Machine, the reason the guy made the Time Machine is because he wanted to save his fiancée from being killed, run over by a horse trolley or something. I don't remember. But what ends up happening is even if he saves her from one thing, she still gets killed somehow, some way. He can't stop this major event. And so it's the idea that little things can be changed. In the whole scheme of things, these little things can be changed in time, but time is going to do the major events so that those can't be changed.
Kind of like the universe in terms of a continuity has a certain stickiness. Like it can't veer very far from the mean. There's something going to happen. It could happen slightly different ways, but it'll always keep it.
It'll go back to where
perhaps maybe it takes more and more energy to.
Oh, that's good.
See, that's the problem. I think that with the multiple universes, the energy problem.
Yeah.
To create our universe, the Big Bang, the energy of that Big Bang, just beyond thinking.
Then again, from the very beginning. If beginning is even the right term, because time didn't start until the Big Bang, etc. But just take it for granted. If there were infinite universes at every single possibility, that means at the Big Bang, infinite universes began to expand. So
right.
It's still the same amount.
I could go that, but that would be that we knew where they were going. Mm-hmm. Although with your wave function crashing thing, I guess that could work. I like that. I actually do. That's a good idea. But
now, who presented a theory about that? I don't have my info.
Right. You look for that, and we'll move on to where we were going before, which is the idea of no time. Now, I'm going to hand this over to Kale, because Kale's the no time guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of the idea of just there is no time. It's an illusion. And everything is as it is at this moment. There is a certain setup of the universe, and it changes and because it changes in the next moment, as we call it, it's just the change from here to now. There's no
cause and effect.
Right, cause and effect. So you look at the moment set up as now, and it's never going to be set up this way again. So you can't go to it because it's not anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Or any when. It's never been. Right. It's not going to be. Oh, maybe it might be set up again like this astronomically at some point, but probably won't be.
Yeah.
Infinity's
well,
time.
What will totally disprove that thinking that I have is if there is an actual way to actually show scientifically that there is space-time. And I know somebody out there is probably going to say, well, that's what gravity, pulls the light waves, it pulls time. No, that's the thing is that I don't think that's what gravity is. I think gravity is in a quantum level, and it's everything pulling into itself. And if that's the case, then gravity is not like a wave. It's not like a photon or an electron pulling in. It is a field pulling in. It's like something going down a drain. It's being pulled into itself. And if that's the case, then there is no space, really. There is only time. And the illusion of time, The illusion of time, which we created. There is no time. There's only cause and effect. Things happen. This happens. And I know people say, oh, well, they put the clocks on the planes and flew them around. Well, I think that we don't have the correct ability to measure what's happening with those clocks. I think cause and effect is happening to them, and that's why when we bring them down, they look like that the time is different.
But then again, the theory of relativity made a prediction about how the clock should behave, and they behaved the way expected. So that's a big point.
Well, of course, and I go with that. But the problem is that we have quantum mechanics that works, and we have relativity that works, and you can't put the two damn things together. Yeah. And I think the reason is because one of them is wrong.
Well, okay, here's a thought.
Or both are wrong, and it's explained.
Yeah, well, probably both of them are a little wrong. You know,
yeah, my thing with space-time has always been the whole idea of space-time. I think we looked at space and saw it a certain way, looked at time and saw it a certain way, and said, well, they're different, but they're kind of the same, so let's put them together. In reality, I think time is just space in a different way because there's so many similarities about it that I think whatever space is, time is, it's just another dimension, and we're just not seeing it because we can't see it. We're seeing it in a different way. So whatever space is, whether it's what we think it is or not, we're perceiving space in 3 dimensions because that's how we perceive it.
Right.
Then time is the 4th dimension. It's also the 4th dimension of space. It's not space-time. Forget the time crap. It's and the way we perceive it, because we're not using our senses, but we still have a perception of it, is time. Because if you look at how we measure space, we measure time the same way. We look at, it's different increments, but it's the same idea. The way that gravity affects space, it affects time. There's so many similarities between the two that, Einstein just said, oh, we'll call it space-time. But I think it's all the same.
I think there's something I can mention, though, that would kind of contest that. Mm-hmm. Because pretty readily in any given spatial dimension, we can identify a vacuum, right? So what does a vacuum look like in time? Because spatially, there's a lot of distance between particles, right? And most of what we know as space, even solid objects, are mostly vacuum because the particles that compose them are so small, and it's the atomic forces that are holding them together and make them feel solid, but there's tons of space there. And then when you get into outer space, you have the occasional gas particle here and there, but it's mostly vacuum. So
that's actually a misnomer.
Just another...
There is a lot in space.
But I mean, we're talking about...
If you look at the measurements, like for every cubic meter of space out there, there's quite a bit of matter there.
Well, I'm not saying that it's a perfect vacuum, but
I don't think
even solid objects, if you like the idea of a singularity, you could crush all of the matter in the Milky Way into something the size of a grapefruit. I think. I don't know if that's the right math or not, but if all of the particles were neighboring one another with no vacuum in between, it would be quite a small...
So what you're saying is there's a lot of space in between things.
Right. Yeah, well, there has to be, because everything in our universe at one time was squished together, and I don't know the exact size, like, I don't know, size of a cherry or a... Right. But the thing is that's why for a while they were thinking about that the universe would create a big crunch, but now they're saying it's just going to expand and forever being pulled apart. But the point is that what you're saying is that there's vacuum, and actually if there is space-time, that space is a physical thing, and so there is always something there within our universe. Every little particle. That's why Michio Kaku talked about the holographic universe, that it's really a whole big hologram, and we're all part of it. So every part of it is filled, and what we perceive as movement is just movement within the hologram.
This is going to be a little complex because of, I'm not going to talk about it quantumly because of the idea of the position of things at a very small level are always statistical. But I'm just going to say, think about one dimension, okay?
Done.
So you're working on just a line, okay? How far would you have to travel before you even collide with another particle on that one dimension? I would guess it would be a very long time because there's so much space between particles.
Well, it's that's relative.
It's not super dense. Well, and in fact, what are those... there's one type of ray that usually it has to, they pass through the Earth all the time.
Neutrinos.
Neutrinos, right. Neutrinos, they pass through the Earth all the time. They very rarely interact and collide with actually anything in the rock and the molten core of the earth and everything. They
Because
pass right through.
Gotcha.
They're so small.
Lots of space.
They go
Right.
through the space.
So lots
So,
of space between.
back-
So the thing is, you could pass through solid matter a long distance.
Okay, let's go with that premise.
Okay,
Now,
so
I'm
with that
gonna get back
premise-
to vacuum time.
With that
Where
premise,
are we going?
think of time as another dimension like
Right.
that. Okay, so what's the difference between traveling through a time vacuum and hitting a particle in time along that axis? If it's the same as space, you would expect the same kind of thing to happen, right?
Right.
That if you're traveling along that axis, you would have portions of vacuum and portions that contain some sort of matter.
Right.
So what does
Or-
that look like?
Well,
As we go through
That's,
time.
that's just that we
think
can't
of
tell.
it.
We don't have the ability to see it because we were
That's
only looking
part of the
at
problem.
three
Is
dimensions.
two things: we're not smart enough yet, and we don't have enough information. Between those two things, we always like to think that we're very advanced. Yeah, maybe next to an amoeba, but how far we're going to be, even within 1,000 years, we're going to be so much smarter because of, the technological singularity and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to look back and say, God, we didn't understand a thing. And I think that's part of the problem of trying to understand these
Well, yeah.
things.
I'm gonna provide a possible answer. You first, though.
I was just going to say, just kind of going with what he said, that you can't, because I've tried. We have our obsessions in science. Mine is not actually time travel. It's actually the fourth dimension, trying to picture the fourth dimension. I have tried to picture the fourth dimension for the last 20 years of my life. I've drawn pictures. I've made graphs. I get so obsessed about it. And I still don't know what it looks like.
Yeah.
Like anyone else. So the thing is that it's kind of the idea of, like a blind fish trying to understand what a cube is. It has no hands, it has no eyes. How could it understand the dimensions of a cube? Well, how can we understand 4 dimensions? Because we've got eyes, we've got hands, and we've got brains which model a 3-dimensional world.
Right.
And there's something that sees time, but I don't know what
I've heard
it
it
is.
summed up as we've evolved in 3-dimensional space with an element of time, and that's what we're built to perceive.
I like that. Very good.
We have no 4th-dimensional eye per se.
Exactly, yes. We can
Because
only...
we didn't need it.
Right, to
Well-
survive. Very good.
Right.
But then again, if you look at what we can perceive, it's so small, like the electromagnetic spectrum. We are seeing
Yeah,
such a small part of that, and that's just one aspect.
But that's a good point. I like
Our
what Daryl-
universe has lots of other aspects that we also are seeing such a small or perceiving such a small amount of it. And if we could see all of this stuff, it might be too overwhelming, but it might coalesce into an understanding of the universe that would amaze us.
But I think that's true. I like that. What? Daryl. Sorry.
Joey's
you off-tracked me.
Oh,
All right.
sorry.
I say Joey's too pliable to manage this thing.
No. I was saying I like his idea. I'm good. Thought. Hold on.
All right.
Silence?
I'm losing Daryl's thought. I was going to say something about... It's gone.
Okay, if it's gone, then I'm going to talk about the possible
Go.
solution about what I posed before. I think that you can untangle each spatial dimension from one another and talk about it in that way of traveling through a vacuum and occasionally hitting a particle. But this is why I think time is a different dimension altogether, because you can't untangle the 3 dimensions from time. Because you have to think about all the particles in the universe moving, vibrating, and traveling through time linearly. You can't untangle time from another dimension of time, for example, because we're not aware of this other time dimension happening. Perhaps you can if you discover one. But what I'm talking about is that the 3 dimensions of space, you can think about them independent of one another, but you can't necessarily talk about time independent of the 3 dimensions of space.
But I think that comes down to
a real
this,
way.
I think that comes down to the same problem, which is we don't have an ability to. We can perceive 3 dimensions, so we can perceive them by themselves.
Yeah.
But we only have a concept of time. Because we only have a concept of time, we don't have the ability to perceive it by itself. We need the structure of the
Right.
3 things to see that concept, because
We use our other
the time-
senses to kind of get an idea.
Because
of
in
time.
fact, I think the 3 dimensions allow us to have a concept of time. That's why we have a concept of it, is through the other 3 dimensions. So we can't conceptually think of time by itself, because without the 3 dimensions we can't perceive time.
The reason we can't perceive time is because it doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, we're back to that. But actually, here's an idea. If we're moving through time, maybe there's a reason. Okay, now I got back to the idea. I remember what it was.
Okay, good.
The idea that we evolve. And as we're evolving, we only need certain things to keep us going. We didn't need infrared, so we needed the spectrum that you were saying, Kale, that we could see with.
A limited amount of visible.
Exactly, because we didn't need to see things that were infrared or X-rays or anything.
We
because
didn't
they
need
weren't
to pick up FM with our brain.
Right, exactly, because they weren't necessary to protect us or whatever. So maybe time is a dimension we're traveling through at a very standard rate. Maybe everything is, or maybe just us and the planet, who knows, is going in one direction. And there's nothing there for us to run into, or it's just an empty dimension, or who knows what. Maybe it is just a vacuum, and because of that, we don't have to worry about it. Or maybe we're such a small, inconsistent part of a huge dimension of time that as we travel through it, it's not something we need to worry about. So we never evolved that way. Because you have to think, one thing you can say about time is it's pretty consistent, relatively.
Yep. And now that we're about to approach an hour, we can also talk about the next idea of time, which is time as a linear, it always moves forward. There is only the movement of the time itself as an arrow.
That's good.
And so that's what it is.
Now, is that onto the idea of that there's only a moment and there's nothing else? Or is it a line?
Time moves.
Time moves on a line.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once it's gone, it's the past is gone.
Okay,
so we just keep moving forward with time.
So our three dimensions are moving on a path through time, and when it passes whatever time is, let's call it the ether. We'll say time is one dimension, a straight line. Our three dimensions are moving on that line, and it changes as we go through that.
And it would keep itself consistent if time travel arises, because as we were talking about the one theory about shooting the laser into the loop, if you're successful with that, you should see the time-traveling laser immediately when you begin the experiment.
Right.
Because that would keep consistency.
When you turn it on, you would see yourself just as you turned it on.
But wait a second, weren't you just saying that the three dimensions are here, so if I was to time travel to this point in time, there's nothing there?
No, I was just addressing his thing. That's what I'm saying. With what I'm talking about,
back to
you can't, because it's no longer there.
Time traveled back to that point.
No, what I'm saying is that
the first time that time happened.
Right, but what he's saying is that the three dimensions, our whole universe moves through time. Yeah. And so if you go back a year or an hour before, our universe isn't there anymore. So you're going back to time without our universe.
Right.
Okay,
so
in that case, time travel would...
It basically isn't possible.
Well, it's possible, but you'd end up in a place that was just time without our universe. There'd be whatever there is...
Well, the problem is that because you're a physical entity, you couldn't exist back there.
Well, yeah, because there's no space.
So once you time travel, you cease to exist. Yeah. So there is no time travel. Well, that's interesting
because there's the idea that there is matter, our universe, in one moment, and there's changes happening. It's basically the idea of no time. And there is time, but it's just...
Right.
That was my head exploding. All right.
So in any of these situations, other than the one laser experiment you're talking about, usually whether or not there's one universe that branches off into multiple universes, or it's just one linear universe that goes along its way, generally speaking, almost anything you look at on the subject is if you want to, if there are multiple universes, it would take nearly infinite energy to get any sort of information from one to the other. And then, if it's just one linear universe, you would have to expend nearly infinite energy to jump from one period of time to another. And I'm not talking about the traveling universe. I'm talking about one where maybe the universe is extruded along this dimension of time.
Maybe you could travel forward. Area. Maybe you could in that arrow of time. Maybe future time travel could be possible, because if you travel forward, when you get there, the universe is now there.
It'll catch up to you eventually.
So you could travel forward in time, maybe, in that respect. But you couldn't travel back. You see what I'm saying?
But then
because you wouldn't be going the speed of the universe, speed in quotes.
Yeah.
Because if that basically means you're traveling forward, if you're gonna get there in a minute, the universe is gonna take 10 minutes, or let's say you want to go 10 minutes in the future. The universe is gonna take 10 minutes to get there. Because we're looking at time as space, basically. And so in 10 minutes, the universe gets there. or you get there in a minute, the universe is still 9 minutes behind you.
That could happen. There might be an aspect of a way that you could. It's like you're outside of that time. You're now your own time on that same.
I think
trajectory.
what we're looking for is frame
Go ahead.
of reference.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll get to mine in a second.
Yeah, we touched upon this last week somehow. I'm trying to recall how we did, but storytelling is told from a frame.
Well,
of
we
reference.
go all over the place, so I'm not surprised.
So I think part of the idea about time is that everybody can have their own frame of reference, and relativistic effects play into that because it's the whole thing about you go off at the speed of light somewhere, and when you return, everyone else is much, much older than you, or everyone you know has died, but you were only gone for 2 years, but when you come back, the Earth is hundreds of years past where you left. And that kind of relativity is, in some sense, kind of like time travel, because you, depending on where you were,
I think it is time. That would be time travel.
Two different frames of reference about how fast time was moving. And again, we're talking about infinite quantities of energy, because the closer you get to the speed of light, the more energy you need. So it's nearly impossible to, in effect, do.
That's why what Ronald Malla is talking about, his new thinking, abandoning the singularity part, where he was talking about slowing down light through quantum crystals, something like that. And by slowing down time, that would allow him to not need a singularity to create his time frame dragging. But
would you be able to elaborate a little bit about what frame dragging means?
It's pulling space time.
Okay.
That's what he's talks about.
So he's talking about, if he had a singularity, he'd be able to cause enough drag on time based on the immense gravity.
Right.
To slow time
using
down.
the power energy of the singularity. But I think I don't have anything other than a hunch, but just like with using the warp drive that another scientist has talked about, where it would have taken way too much energy to create a warp drive. Mm-hmm. Now the new math that they've done, by angling it, now it looks like it's going to be possible with the energy of, at least something we can do the size of like a truck. So anyway, maybe that's something we can talk about in the future. Is
why don't we go there now?
Warp speed. and
I'm looking forward to that show. Let's just there we go. All right.
Something that you guys mentioned earlier, or Daryl mentioned earlier, that I think would be another way of looking at time travel is basically the idea of kind of what you're saying, a frame of reference. But let's say that you time travel and you change something, but if you go outside of time, you're not affected by it. So let's say you go to the grandfather theory. You go in the past, you kill your grandfather. Okay, but you don't die because you're outside of the timeline now. You're not where you're supposed to be, therefore it doesn't affect you, so there's no paradox. So you can go back and make changes that won't become paradoxes, they're just changes.
There's something you just made me think about right there.
What?
Because normally when you think about the linear version of time, picture a dust cloud billowing out, right? And then take that dust cloud and in your mind extrude it over the line of time, and you can see all the particles follow their own trajectory. So you have three-dimensional space moving through time. So you can just extrude all the movement in the universe down this one trajectory, right?
Right.
Now what you're saying about if you have multiple universes all splitting off of this as well, with all the different possible ways that dust cloud could billow, then time is two-dimensional. Because now you have a plane of time. And this universe is extruded along this one dimension, and there's an infinitesimal distance to the side of it. There's another dimension where things move slightly differently, And
so
you
it's
do
almost
that infinitely.
It's the two choices. It's the branches about alternate universes.
So maybe time is multidimensional, like space.
Well, and if you look at what scientists are saying now, they're saying there's 11 dimensions, and I'm not sure if time is looked at. Do they look at time out there in internet land?
I don't know what.
Let us know. But no, I think maybe they look at time as 3 dimensions. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Right.
That's actually a very good point, or 2 dimensions, because I can totally see that in my head. The dust. I'm thinking more of branches going out for each decision, but it's the same idea.
If you think about from the beginning of time, time's always been this plane, and we're stuck on one line going through that plane.
Right.
But there are all these other possibilities and other universes that are following their own line. And if you could somehow find a way to travel in the, if time is X and you have interdimensional time represented as Y, we're talking about the ability to jump in the Y direction. Because we're kind of stuck in our universe that has its own trajectory. Maybe free will does that for us. When we make a decision on something, we are moving in the Y-axis of time.
So, like, if a guy is traveling through time and he's on one of the branches, he's trapped in his time. He's going whatever direction. But at the same time, his choices are steering him down one path or the other. And so because of that, he is time traveling, but he would never know what the other choices are because it's relative. It's completely relative.
Well, time traveling in the sense of always moving forward.
And for him, it's a straight line.
Yeah.
Because if you look at his branches go straight, but there's really other branches come out. Yeah, that's a pretty good idea. I like that. It's good, yeah.
It's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to look over my notes and see if there's anything interesting we should bring up.
I was just going to mention that the many worlds theory apparently was introduced by Ewwwwww III.
How long ago?
1964.
Smart guy, that Ewwwwww.
Probably. I said I was going to look it up, and by gosh, I did.
You did.
Okay, let's see here. Superstring. Wormholes. Anybody want to say anything about wormholes?
Wormhole?
Sure.
Oh, time travel. Yeah.
Because that's another very possible way that time travel would be possible. Wait, okay, now isn't that what the pizza guy was saying?
Yeah.
Okay, pizza guy was saying...
You just got a delivery from Domino's, and this guy's like, let me tell you about my theory of space-time. And you're like, take your $5 tip and leave. Come on.
No, that's not what we said. We said, come on in and take a seat.
Oh,
tell us.
Right.
Richard Gott.
Okay, Richard Gott, he was on Morgan Freeman's Is Time Travel Possible, and he had this idea of cosmic strings.
Cosmic strings, yes.
Right, and that was part of it, using a wormhole to travel, but it was also a form of time travel.
It did work mathematically.
Yeah.
And that's why it was cool, but once again, it would have taken way too much energy to make it work.
But who's to say that the universe isn't like that? Maybe... fiddling around with the way things are just takes too much energy to do anything about it.
Well, and that's
even though it's technically possible.
Maybe we're just so small that the idea of energy to us is just like, there can't possibly be that much energy in the universe.
Well, yeah, because we're not accounting for everything with dark
that's
matter,
like
dark energy.
They were saying things like that about atomic energy. So we just don't have enough knowledge to say it. Like you said, we're probably saying...
But a lot of these theories, they say things like, okay, at least you would need to... take all the energy in like a neutron star and apply it to this problem.
Well, see, and that's one of the things
for us to do.
As far as I'm concerned, the whole dark energy, dark matter thing, it's just we don't see the stuff. It's just a lot of stuff out there that we don't see. We don't perceive it, and so we're going, it's this special form. It's like the ether thing. And I know they've got theories saying they know what it is now at dark energy, but the fact is it's probably a whole bunch of crap that we cannot perceive. Yeah. Maybe other dimensions or maybe whatever, but we can...
Or maybe that, because isn't it like 95%
Yeah, it's like 95% of the universe is dark energy and dark matter.
We can't see. And so, you know what it is? 95%? This is my theory. Oh, God. What it is
we're better than all that dark matter and all that dark energy.
That's the rest of the universe who has advanced so far, and we just haven't got there yet. Everybody else has advanced up to that level where they are the 95% of the universe, but they were keeping us down here because we're not advanced enough.
There are a couple of theories
sounds like you got some issues there.
There are a couple of theories about that, though. It could be that either they're keeping us uninformed or just space travel is so pricey in terms of energy that even once you learn the secrets of the universe, you still can't do it. Like, maybe they're trying to contact us, but it's taking, 3 million years for the message to get to us. And then it's going to take another 3 million for us to respond. And maybe they're traveling close to the speed of light, and they'll get the message back from us at 1.5 million
One
years.
key to identifying insanity is when people start saying they. I'm sorry, go on.
Who are they?
What?
Who?
The
aliens,
them. The aliens.
They.
The
Well,
they.
I think
The ones keeping us
I
down.
think it's like the
Government, the
prime
man.
directive,
Right, yeah.
It's the prime directive. They can't interfere because we're not advanced enough. But once we
nobody-
are, we'll
Nobody
be
can
able
find us. We're like at the back end of the galaxy.
We're the
There's a little
back-
planet,
yeah.
because it looks like all the
On the
planets
outside
are huge.
arm of a
Everybody
little
else's planets
galaxy.
are- yeah.
I have to give my little 2 cents on this, though. I think that it's almost futile to try to guess what ET would think. Because
Well,
either
all we
they're-
can say is out.
if
So
they
what
have
does he
the
think?
ability to contact us, they're going to be... They followed a different evolutionary chain than us. They grew up in a different environment than us. They
Yeah, in
probably
a galaxy
have
far,
brains
far
that,
away.
whatever they think with. Operates on a totally different level than us. How are we going to guess how they react?
I used
or
to
how
believe
they
that,
treat
Daryl.
us?
I used to totally believe that, and I still partially do, because my thing was there's 2 forms of life on Earth. Plants and animals. And they're completely different! I mean, they were in the same environment. I mean, we do share some things are the same,
Right.
and we depend on each other, but look at a tree, and look at a dog. I mean, it's completely different, and that's on the same planet. So I do agree with you in that sense, but Kayla and I have talked about it before. The possibility that evolution is like
we
the
were just
law,
recently talking about that.
Evolution is like a law of physics type thing, where it happens in a certain way.
It happens this way.
And
This
it's just
is the
going to
way
happen that way. So the
But
environment
then
does
again,
have
I'm saying
effect.
would you go back in time and have a conversation with like a 1,000,000-year-old human? Whatever existed a million years ago, that was eventually our distant evolutionary cousins.
Right. I get what you're saying.
Are we going to be able to make them understand anything? Can we even communicate with them? So let's take it the other direction. There's a civilization that's a million years ahead of us. We have no clue what's going on in their head.
I agree. There's probably no way to see that, but Kale opened my mind to the possibility that maybe we've all evolved similarities. Yeah. But I kind of think it's the same way.
And then, saying a million years is kind of a short call. I mean, how do we know with the universe being an estimated 15 billion. Because it's like our Milky Way is about 5 billion years old. But, the universe, 15 billion years.
14.
Who's to say that someone didn't get a 10 billion year head start on us?
Right? No, you're right. And
so
what are they like?
What would they be? They might be.
Begin to drool.
They might be intelligent dust that floats around. The
it all happened with a big bang.
Who knows?
No. Daryl's got a good point there, because you got to watch Battlefield Cell.
Battlefield Earth.
Don't watch Battlefield Earth.
Home of the Kenton shot.
No, but I think it was Battlefield Cell. It is awesome. They show a single cell.
I want to see that.
They show a single cell, and it is so complicated. There's a universe inside of one cell. Mm-hmm. And seeing that makes you realize that complexity can work in so many different ways. That aliens could be...
Which is why I don't think that you would have 2 identical civilizations in the universe, unless the universe is so big that everything happens more than once.
When you were talking about how the stream and there's a possibility within this amount.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, because if you look on Earth, things evolve differently, to like Australian marsupials, but there's a basic kind of like Plato's form, of animals and plants. And what I've been talking with Joey about is that evolution maybe has to evolve this way within a certain range.
I think if you get a planet that's similar to Earth around a sun that's similar to our sun, you're going to probably end up with life, if life evolves there, that's similar to us.
But who says it has to be even the same materials, like based on carbon? Like
and that's kind of
silicate-based life. And
right, but kind of what I'm saying
these other variables
is if it's similar, then we're going to become
silicon-based life form.
Okay, he's Soundwave.
Yeah, that was a Transformer moment.
Yeah, Soundwave is our mascot today. I should mention that every week. This week, Soundwave will be our mascot. He's from the War Or I don't remember. Fall of Cybertron.
Can you do
series.
his voice? Soundwave?
Hello, Megatron.
Ravage, Sam.
That's pretty good.
That was good.
That was good.
Rumble, eject.
That was right.
Well, when you breathe Starscream, you
Take
can
this,
do his
Auto
voice.
Scums.
What do you think you're doing, Cobra? No, wait.
That was last week.
All right.
Okay, I think we're about at the end here.
Yep.
Is there anything anybody else wants to mention about time travel since we're talking about Starscream and
Well,
Rumble?
it's a cool thing, and it bends your mind, and that's always a good thing.
That's my mind bending. I don't know why I made that sound.
Bringing it back to the movie thing, I
Okay.
really appreciate movies that give you enough to chew on that after the fact.
I
you think
agree.
about. Looper made me think a
Yeah.
lot. It also made me appreciate it that it's a really good story. It has its little setup flaws, but as long as you forgive it some of its premise, I think it's a
That's
beautiful
why I said
story,
I
you know?
liked the movie. I really liked the movie all the
Yeah.
way through. I just didn't like the ending, and
Yeah.
it does.
And
But that doesn't stop me
I
from
think
wanting
part
to
of why-
own the movie or keep it
Yeah.
or watch it again. I
I think
will.
why I'm okay with it is I thought that there are enough tips of the hat that say this person doesn't become the Rainmaker. But then again, you're not left with the certainty about it, just like the main character was.
Yeah.
So I can kind of live with it from that perspective, because this was really Joe's story. And Joe doesn't know if he sacrificed himself in vain or not.
And I have now newfound respect for the movie because Daryl had some good points.
Thank you.
Kale, you had some points about the ending, but I'm fine with it too. So
Yeah.
sorry. I'm pretty pissed off about the guy losing the fingers and then the feet and everything. That
Yeah,
was that.
It's just
part.
one of those things where mechanically, at least they show you how their version of time travel works, and then accepting that, you know what to expect.
Maybe they made enough money on this one that they'll make the next movie, and we'll get to see what really happened to the
happens to
Rainmaker.
Rainmaker,
Now,
yeah.
that movie, I think, would be good too.
It's a little weird that a kid named Sid would become such an evil menace. Maybe it was the name.
It's Sid Vicious.
Too much razzing at school. Sid, get over here.
That's why I changed the name, Rainmaker.
That's right.
He's a Rainmaker, yeah.
That's more ominous.
Well, did you see the little crop duster thing go? As soon as I saw
Yeah.
that, I was thinking, Rainmaker!
Yeah.
It's that thing right there!
Yeah.
But, yeah. So anyway...
Well, there's some point in the movie where they mentioned that, because they say the legend of the Rainmaker is kind of like he got turned into a mythology. 'Cause
Right,
you know
right,
how
right.
he gets like clipped by the bullet at the end? Well, they
Yeah.
said he had like a steel jaw at one point.
That's right!
But then
I
again, you
missed
see
that.
him like he just had like a flesh wound.
Right,
But maybe
right.
that steel jaw thing was like a legend that got born out of that story. Or maybe later on, he just to menace people. He's like, I've already got a big scar. Why don't I just put on the bolt?
Well, but no, see, that doesn't work
Jaw,
because in the
yeah.
other one, what's his name never went back. He killed himself.
Well, I mean, he got clipped in the jaw both times, because in the original continuity, his mother got shot next,
oh.
and then he escaped
Oh.
and got
But
on
it
the
was
train
just a
and
flesh wound.
Right. So, and then
Who was
there
chasing him in
another
the
thing,
original
though,
continuity?
What I was going to say was the apparently his name did come from the crop duster thing,
Oh.
because he took that name because his mother had the Rainmakers on the farm. So
What,
that was in there somewhere. I
where
swear.
are you getting this?
I
All
swear.
the side story. I don't remember any of that.
Okay, maybe
Who was hunting him on the original
Okay,
line? Because
one of the things I did is I saw an interview with the director, which
Oh.
maybe that was maybe there's some extra
That's
info there from that.
cheater, right?
So, what was your question about the continuity?
what?
No, he had
Yeah.
none.
Yeah, no question. Okay.
Okay, no.
He was about to wrap us up.
No, I was gonna say
think so.
we didn't get to 12 Monkeys, which I thought was good because it had to do with was this guy really time traveling or was he crazy?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Reality. Maybe we should talk about that next
Well,
week.
there's another frame of reference thing.
Yeah.
About, that might be one of our next topics, is talking about frame of reference in terms of a story, and
Well, no, Soundwave!
which kind of leads to the thing about Pan's Labyrinth. Also, that was more of a frame of reference. Do you believe
Well,
the
I
young
think
girl's
that-
frame of reference, or was something else?
I think that's good for
happening?
next week. Maybe the idea not necessarily from reference, but reality. Each person's reality.
Okay, what reality is?
What reality
Okay.
is and how we see it. Let's do that next week.
Maybe our homework assignment is all of us need to watch the so-called Men in Black episode of X-Files.
Oh, God.
from outer
I just
space.
saw that recently. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's so good. Have you seen
I
it before?
haven't seen it.
I don't think he's gonna like it.
Wait a second.
one of
No,
the-
I think
It's the one with Jesse Ventura and Alex Trebek.
Yeah,
play
okay,
parts on there.
okay, we'll
Haven't
make
seen
it
it.
required viewing. I want to refresh on it anyway, but
All right.
Okay.
It's a story
Okay.
about what is reality because the story is told from different perspectives throughout the show. So it's really it's geared toward that.
All
I
right.
think. Yeah,
sounds good.
awesome.
Okay, so this is the end then.
microwave.
This is Joey
It's
Shamble
okay.
And Cale Anderson.
And Daryl Jors.
and Linda with the microwave, and we're saying so long.
And
until
where
next
can we
week.
find ourselves on the internet?
Oh, and we're going to talk about where we can find ourselves on the internet. Thanks for that really smooth.
Yeah, that worked.
Hey, Daryl, if I was looking for you on the internet, where can I find you?
You can go to jors.com. That's GIORS.com.
And hey, Kale, what about you?
Well, you can go look up my blog, Rom's Rants. Got a couple of things you can see there, and from there you can kind of go to other things that I've done.
But if you look up his blog, be sure to give him a tip.
That's that. I don't know why that sounded dirty, but it did. I know.
And look up your blog. And if you're looking for me on the internet, good luck. If you're looking for me, look for Incoherent Ramblings. I'll probably be somewhere around there.
Incoherentramblings.com?
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't available, so
Oh, was it?
done
No.
something now.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we'll
find
backfill or
something.
something.
Yeah, okay, we'll figure it
find,
out.
We'll find something.
All right, so from us, we'd like to say goodbye for this week, and we'll see you next time on Incoherent Ramblings.
All right,
Bye.
adios, everyone.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, by the way, we wanted to thank everybody out there who's been contacting us. It's been great to hear some feedback.
You're awesome. Everyone on Facebook
Thank
and
you,
Google
thank you,
Plus
thank you,
has
thank
been
you.
great feedback. I'm very appreciative. And feel free to call us out on anything that we're
Yeah.
not accurate about, or
We're a
There
bunch of
is a
dorks.
bunch of crap you're going to be able to talk about.
we'd like to leave no stone unturned. So keep it coming, and thanks a lot.
Yeah, so everybody else out there, just keep them coming. That's great.
Looking good.
Who the hell's...
I don't know.
What the hell is-
Thanks for listening. You can now stop screaming at the open air. Listeners should put their minds back in their upright positions and resume traditional thinking. Find us on IamRambling.com for access to all of our weekly ramblings, show notes, general discussions, and any projects from Incoherent Ramblings. Like us on Facebook and rate us on iTunes. So long, and thanks for all the fish.